Hello, this is Patient X Files, where the rare becomes real. His organs were melting. I never told anyone this story, but some secrets are too heavy to carry alone. It was 3 in the morning when my phone rang. The kind of call that makes your blood freeze before you even answer. My brother's voice was barely a whisper, cracking with terror I'd never heard before. Something's wrong with David, really wrong. David was my nephew, 8 years old, the kid who could light up a room just by walking into it, the one who collected rocks and asked impossible questions about why the sky changes colors. 3 days ago, he was building sandcastles at the beach. Now, according to my brother, he was lying in a hospital bed and the doctors couldn't figure out what was killing him. His fever won't break, my brother continued, his words tumbling over each other. It's been 104 for 2 days. And there's something else. His skin. It's changing color. Yellow. Like He couldn't finish the sentence. I was already reaching for my car keys. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every red light was an eternity. Every mile stretched like a lifetime. I kept thinking about David's laugh, the way he'd scrunch up his nose when he concentrated on his drawings, the way he'd sneak extra cookies when he thought no one was looking. When I finally reached the pediatric ICU, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. The boy in that bed barely looked like my nephew. His skin had taken on a sickly yellow hue like old parchment left too long in the sun. But it wasn't just the color. His face was swollen, almost unrecognizable. His breathing was labored, each breath a visible struggle. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, making him look ancient, like an old man trapped in a child's body. My brother grabbed my arm the moment he saw me. His grip was desperate, pleading. "They don't know what it is," he whispered. "They've run every test. Nothing makes sense. His white blood cell count is through the roof, but there's no infection they can find. His liver is failing, his spleen is huge, and his platelets..." He paused, swallowing hard. "They're almost gone." The doctor on duty was a kind-faced woman in her 50s with tired eyes that had seen too much. Dr. Sarah Chen. She pulled us into a small consultation room that smelled like disinfectant and despair. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said, her voice gentle but direct. "David is very sick. Sicker than we initially realized. His immune system appears to be attacking his own organs. We're seeing massive inflammation throughout his body. His liver, spleen, bone marrow, they're all under assault." "From what?" my brother demanded. "What's attacking him?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "We think it might be something called Hemophagocytic Lymphohistiocytosis, HLH. It's rare, very rare." The name sounded like a curse, foreign and terrifying. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means his immune system has gone into overdrive. Instead of protecting him, it's destroying him from the inside. His own white blood cells are essentially eating his organs." The room went silent except for the sound of my brother's sharp intake of breath. "Eating his organs?" he repeated, his voice barely audible. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "In HLH, certain immune cells called macrophages become hyperactivated. They start consuming other blood cells, tissue, and even parts of organs. It's like having an internal war where your own army has turned against your cities." I felt sick. The image was too vivid, too horrible. David's own body was betraying him, consuming him from within like some nightmare from a horror movie. "Can you fix it?" my brother asked, his voice breaking. "We're going to try everything we can," Dr. Chen said. "But I need you to understand, HLH is aggressive. Without treatment, it's fatal. Even with treatment, She paused. It's challenging. Over the next few hours, we learned more about this monster that had invaded David's small body. HLH wasn't just one disease. It was like a final common pathway that different triggers could activate. Sometimes it was genetic, a mutation that made the immune system unstable from birth. Sometimes it was triggered by infections, cancers, or autoimmune diseases. But regardless of the trigger, the result was the same: the body's defense system becoming its own executioner. The symptoms read like a checklist of horrors: persistent high fever, enlarged liver and spleen, dangerously low blood counts, and the most chilling detail, those hyperactivated macrophages literally engulfing and destroying other blood cells, a process doctors called hemophagocytosis. It was happening inside David right now as we sat in that sterile waiting room helpless. As dawn broke, David took a turn for the worse. His fever spiked to 105. His breathing became more labored. The monitors around his bed began beeping with increasing urgency. His organs are shutting down, Dr. Chen explained grimly. The inflammation is overwhelming his system. We need to start aggressive treatment now. What followed was a blur of medical terms and procedures that sounded like medieval torture. Chemotherapy drugs to suppress his overactive immune system, steroids to reduce inflammation, immunoglobulin infusions. Each treatment carried its own risks, its own potential for devastating side effects. But without them, David would die. I watched my brother age 10 years in 10 minutes as he signed consent form after consent form, each one acknowledging that the treatments meant to save his son could also kill him. There's something else, Doctor, Chen said quietly. Even if we get the HLH under control, David may need a bone marrow transplant. His bone marrow is severely damaged. It might not recover on its own. A bone marrow transplant at 8 years old. I thought of David's dreams of becoming a paleontologist, of digging up dinosaur bones and solving ancient mysteries. Now we were just hoping he'd live long enough to see his 9th birthday. The treatment began that afternoon. They pumped David's tiny body full of chemicals designed to shut down his immune system, the very system that was supposed to keep him alive. It was a desperate gamble, like setting fire to your house to kill the termites eating it from inside. For 3 days, nothing happened. David remained critically ill, his body a battlefield where every organ was under siege. His parents took turns at his bedside, whispering stories, playing his favorite songs, desperately trying to anchor him to this world with love and memory. On the 4th day, something changed. His fever dropped to 102, still high but lower than it had been in a week. His breathing seemed a little easier. The swelling in his face began to recede, revealing glimpses of the boy we remembered. Dr. Chen was cautiously optimistic. His inflammatory markers are coming down, she said. The treatment seems to be working, but HLH is unpredictable. We need to stay vigilant. Over the following weeks, David slowly began to improve. Color returned to his cheeks. His appetite came back in small increments. First just ice chips, then broth, finally real food. His energy gradually returned, though he remained weak and tired easily. But the disease had left its mark. David's hair had fallen out from the chemotherapy. His immune system was severely compromised, making him vulnerable to infections that wouldn't bother a healthy child. Simple activities left him exhausted. The vibrant, energetic boy who had built sandcastles just weeks before was now a fragile shadow of himself. The psychological impact was equally devastating. David had nightmares about his body betraying him. He became anxious about every minor ache or pain, terrified that the monster inside him was waking up again. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his own body tried to kill him? 3 months later, David did need that bone marrow transplant. His older sister turned out to be a perfect match, a small miracle in a story full of darkness. The transplant process was brutal, involving completely destroying David's existing immune system with massive doses of chemotherapy and radiation, then rebuilding it from scratch with his sister's healthy bone marrow. For weeks, David lived in complete isolation, his body completely defenseless against even the most minor infections. Visitors had to wear full protective gear. Even his parents could only touch him through sterile gloves. It was like watching a boy living in a bubble, separated from the world by the very treatments meant to save him. But slowly, miraculously, David's new immune system began to take hold. His blood counts improved. His energy returned. 6 months after that terrible night when my phone rang at 3 a.m., David was finally coming home. Today, 2 years later, David is a different child. Not broken, but changed. He still collects rocks, but now he also collects medical journal articles about rare diseases. He wants to be a doctor when he grows up, to help other kids like him. The experience that nearly killed him has given him a purpose, a drive to understand and fight the monsters that hide inside the human body. But HLH isn't done with our family. It lurks in the background like a sleeping dragon because we learned that David has a genetic form of the disease. The mutation that made his immune system unstable is part of his DNA. It could reactivate at any time. Regular monitoring, careful management of infections, and constant vigilance have become part of our new normal. HLH affects about 1 in 50,000 children, though many experts believe it's underdiagnosed. The symptoms can mimic so many other conditions, infections, cancers, autoimmune diseases, that many cases are missed until it's too late. The key is recognizing the pattern: persistent fever, enlarged organs, abnormal blood counts, and those telltale signs of hemophagocytosis on bone marrow examination. The disease doesn't discriminate. It affects children and adults, though it's more common in infants and young children. Some cases are triggered by infections like Epstein-Barr virus or cytomegalovirus. Others are associated with cancers, particularly lymphomas. And some, like David's, are caused by genetic mutations that make the immune system inherently unstable. What makes HLH so terrifying is how quickly it can progress. From the first symptoms to organ failure can be a matter of days or weeks. The body's own defense system becomes a raging fire, consuming everything in its path. Without prompt recognition and aggressive treatment, the mortality rate approaches 100%. But there is hope. When diagnosed early and treated aggressively, many patients can achieve remission. New treatments are being developed, including targeted therapies that can more precisely control the overactive immune system without completely destroying it. Gene therapy holds promise for children with genetic forms of the disease. Research into HLH is expanding our understanding of how the immune system works and what happens when it goes wrong. Scientists are discovering that many other diseases may involve similar processes of immune dysregulation. The lessons learned from studying HLH could lead to breakthroughs in treating autoimmune diseases, cancers, and other conditions where the body attacks itself. David's story is both a nightmare and a miracle. A nightmare because no child should have to endure what he went through. A miracle because he survived and because his experience has contributed to medical knowledge that could save other children. Every few months, David goes back to the hospital for follow-up appointments. Blood draws to check his counts, scans to monitor his organs, consultations with specialists who have become like family. Each visit carries the weight of possibility, the hope that everything remains stable and the fear that the monster might be stirring again. But David faces these visits with courage that humbles the adults around him. He's learned that his body can betray him, but he's also learned that it can heal. He's seen the worst that medicine has to offer, but also its miracles. He carries both knowledge and hope in equal measure. The boy who almost died from his own immune system now spends his free time reading about immunology. He can explain T cells and macrophages better than many medical students. He understands his disease in ways that would have been impossible if he hadn't lived through it. Sometimes I watch him playing with other children, and I'm struck by the paradox of his existence. He looks normal, healthy even, but inside his body there's a complex ballet of medications and monitoring, a carefully maintained balance that keeps the dragon sleeping. He lives with the knowledge that his own body is both his greatest enemy and his most precious possession. The experience changed our entire family. We learned that health is not a given, that the body's systems we take for granted can turn against us without warning. We learned that medicine is both more powerful and more limited than we thought. We learned that hope and despair can coexist in the same moment. We also learned about the incredible dedication of medical professionals who choose to fight rare diseases. Dr. Chen and her team became warriors in David's battle, fighting alongside us against an enemy we could barely understand. They worked tirelessly, often around the clock, adjusting treatments, monitoring responses, never giving up even when the odds seemed impossible. The other families we met in the pediatric ICU became a second family, bound together by shared trauma and hope. We celebrated small victories together, a fever breaking, a blood count improving, a child taking their first steps after weeks of bed rest. We also mourned together when treatments failed, when the dragon won. These experiences taught us that rare diseases are not so rare when you're living with one. Every day, families around the world are getting phone calls like the one I received that night. Every day, children are fighting battles inside their own bodies, wars that most of us never have to think about. HLH remains largely unknown to the general public, but for those affected by it, it becomes the center of their universe. Support groups connect families across continents, sharing information, hope, and understanding. Researchers work tirelessly to develop better treatments driven by the faces of children like David. The financial burden of treating HLH is staggering. Hospital stays that stretch for months, expensive medications that must be taken for years, frequent monitoring and testing. The costs can bankrupt families even with good insurance. The emotional toll is equally devastating as families watch their children endure treatments that are almost as brutal as the disease itself. But within this darkness, there are points of light. The kindness of strangers who donate blood products that keep HLH patients alive. The nurses who stay past their shifts to comfort frightened children. The researchers who dedicate their careers to understanding rare diseases that affect relatively few people but devastate the families they touch. David's journey with HLH is ongoing. He may live with the risk of relapse for the rest of his life. He may need additional treatments, more hospitalizations, constant vigilance. But he's alive, and he's thriving in ways that matter most. He's learned empathy in a way that most children never do, having experienced profound vulnerability and dependence on others. He's learned to appreciate simple pleasures, the taste of food after weeks of nausea, the feeling of sunlight on skin after isolation, the joy of playing with friends after months of being too weak to get out of bed. Most importantly, he's learned that he is stronger than he ever imagined. The boy who survived his own body's attempt to destroy him now faces each day with quiet confidence. He knows he can endure almost anything because he already has. As I write this story, David is upstairs doing homework, complaining about his math assignment like any normal 10-year-old. His hair has grown back thicker than before. His energy has returned, though he still tires more easily than other children his age. He carries a small scar on his chest where his central line was placed, a permanent reminder of his battle with HLH. But he also carries something more valuable, the knowledge that he faced down a monster and won. Not everyone gets that kind of certainty about their own strength. Not everyone learns so young that they can survive the unthinkable. The phone call that changed our lives came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. It brought news of a disease we'd never heard of, a battle we never wanted to fight. But it also brought us together in ways we never expected. It showed us the depths of love, the power of hope, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. David's organs aren't melting anymore. His immune system, rebuilt from his sister's bone marrow, now protects him instead of attacking him. The dragon still sleeps inside him, but it's held in check by science, vigilance, and an indomitable will to live. His story continues every day, with each blood test that comes back normal, each milestone he reaches, each dream he dares to dream. The boy who almost died from his own body's betrayal is now planning to become a doctor, to fight the same monster that once tried to claim him. That's the thing about hope. It grows strongest in the darkest places, and sometimes, just sometimes, it wins. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Please write a comment what you think about this video.